Hey, what's going on, everybody? Another month, another Game Informer magazine. This time, the front cover features Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. And not gonna lie, similar to Borderlands, I'm like, oh, cool cover, but I don't know if this game is for me. I still don't know. This is actually, they had, it being on the cover, they had a huge story about it. And I read it, and I was like, oh, that actually sounds pretty cool. Like, I'll have to keep my eye out. But then there was more news that came out about this game and some possible weird monetization things. And I'm like, now I'm mixed. Which I guess is overall more positive than I was before, but it's complicated. But anyway, cover aside, I'm bringing y'all my 5 favorite articles from this issue, and we're starting with "Joy is Reason Enough" by Brian Shea. And this is an opinion piece, and I like this piece because it touches on kind of like FOMO with not just games, but like media in general, and missing out on the moment, missing out on the like cultural zeitgeist, the conversation around like games or movies or like whatever it might be. And he's saying this in opposed to, you see the picture is Breath of the Wild. It's a comfort game, something that he likes to go back to, and talks about like all the crazy news that's been happening this year especially, so some comfort is definitely needed. And I really respect him for writing this, because I've also felt that way to some extent. I feel like I've been playing a lot of new games as of recently, but one that I actually went back to that's a little bit older is Ghost of Tsushima. Now you can say, Yote is coming up, so it makes sense. You want to like get a refresher, things like that. But, I still haven't touched Peak. I haven't put much time into Rematch. Like, there's so many other games I guess I could be playing instead of Ghost of Tsushima, but it's like, I also love Ghost of Tsushima, so I'm glad that he said in the article here, which I thought was really impactful, he reminded himself that time spent doing something you love isn't time wasted. And I agree. Alright, so this next one is a doozy. It is Number Go Up by Mike Futter. There is a ton of good information and insights inside this article, so I definitely recommend people check it out on the Game Informer website, or if you have the magazine, be sure to read this one. It's like towards the very back, like only a few pages left, but it's a good one. It's a good one to end on. There's a lot of different things that I would love to touch on, but I'm just gonna try and keep it to a few bullets here. This is the chart kind of showing the spending between 2013 and 2020, and as you can see, 2020 was way up, like over 20 points up. So this page is talking about how the behavior for gamers has kind of shifted as well. So this chart in particular is showing you like 57% of people that play games have been playing games that are like older than, or have come out in 2018 or older. So it's like not as many people playing newer games. That, on top of the fact that it kind of goes into it in the next page, that live service games are super big, and only a few, with it being included in this number, like Fortnite and Minecraft, and let me see, what other ones did they have on here? GTA, Destiny, games like that. Those are taking up a lot of the time that players will be spending playing games. And this last point I thought was really interesting on the like 2 points or 2 paths diverged section, talking about indie game development and publishing versus like AAA games, and how the two kind of need each other, but it seems like maybe like the AAA side of gaming doesn't fully realize that. And it's not something I think I've ever actively thought about, but I think it's totally true, because it says that the indie game developers are able to innovate and create new ideas, and then AAA developers will see that idea and they'll solidify it. So there were some examples like MOBAs, battle royales, roguelikes, Like those have all gone to like AAA, like very widely known status through the innovation of indie developers. All right, another day, another article, at least for me. So today we're going to be talking about This Is Not a Cozy Game by Jill Grote. I'm not sure if I said your last name, Jill, correctly, but I apologize if not. But this was an interesting one, and I feel like very topical for the conversations that have been taking place in the gaming community as of late. Greg Lobanov, which I'm sorry if I mispronounced, the last names I'm really struggling with, but Greg Lobanov seemed like they didn't necessarily align themselves with like the cozy game label, but they've also made games like Wonder Song and Chicory, A Colorful Tale, and Beastie Ball, which came out on Steam Early Access, I guess around release of this magazine, which a lot of people would consider to be cozy by nature. So I found it interesting that the developer kind of didn't really associate themselves with that. And one of the reasons for it was the idea that if you make a cozy game to Greg, that means the game might be perceived as not challenging. And I don't know that I've ever personally thought that, but I could see why you might reach that conclusion. But they also talk about towards the end this new genre of like cozy creepy games that are coming up that take advantage of the assumptions that like, oh, because something looks cute, like it can't be scary or alarming or maybe even challenging in a sense. So I thought this was pretty interesting perspective here, and interesting to see kind of like what people clung onto with cozy games. My own perspective on cozy games, I'm kind of surprised that maybe this was alluded to but not talked about explicitly, the idea of just games that you've previously played before and you love the game and you kind of just you play it over and over. That kind of becomes a cozy game because it's just like you're comfortable, you feel at home in this environment, like whatever the environment may be. Even with Resident Evil, like, you know, I used to watch I think it's Seamus, or no, it's SSOHPKC. I don't know how you say his actual name, but his actual name is Seamus. Don't know how you say his username, but I feel like the Resident Evil series is kind of like his cozy game series, because he would do speed runs of like Resident Evil 2, try to get the best time, try to get all these different awards, and he was just like casually going there, like he wasn't scared of anything, or maybe every once in a while like something might startle him, but he was just genuinely having a good time, like speed running the game and like talking about fun facts about the game, the lore, like the differences between the remake and the OG, all that kind of stuff. So I think really like what this article said at the very beginning is that cozy is super subjective, and it's really eye of the beholder kind of thing. But it's interesting to see a bunch of game developers and creators that were interviewed for this article kind of break down what cozy meant to them and come up with a few common themes. Alright, so the next one up is Through Sand, Sea, and Snow by Marcus Stewart. And this is about Sword of the Sea, a title that I was waiting for quite some time. And I actually did, by the time I got to creating this video, I did get to play Sword of the Sea. So I can provide some of my own little insights as well. But Marcus got to talk with the creative director and studio co-founder for Giant Squid and the creative director for Sword of the Sea, Matt Nava. And it was interesting reading through the interview again, especially because I read this before I played the game, and now I'm reading it post beating the game, or at least beating the main story. And some of the things I feel like resonate with me, other things I'm like, maybe I need to like revisit the game or process some things a little bit more. Something that stuck out to me was some of the comments around the narrative, which isn't explicitly told to you, kind of similar to Journey, which is one of the more famous Giant Squid games that I've also played, actually. And kind of laying out that the story is around Wraith, who is a warrior from a time long ago and has since had to kind of retire from, I guess, fighting, but still has the sword and kind of makes it into a new tool that they can use. In which case it's like a skateboard, snowboard, surfboard kind of thing where they explore the world with it, which I thought was interesting. And I feel like the game itself could have given me more of that at the beginning. Like if I hadn't read this before playing, I might maybe not have internalized that. But Sword of the Sea was very fun. It was a very, almost speaking of like cozy games, it felt like somewhat of a cozy adventure where you're kind of like tricking with the snowboarding or the skateboarding or surfing, whatever you want to look at it as, throughout these different environments, trying to pull off new combos, trying to pull off longer combos, get all these points. And then I feel like the narrative, it didn't strike me like Journey's narrative did, and maybe I just have to give it a bit more thought. But I do still like it. I don't want to spoil it since, it just came out and there's a lot to learn about this game. But overall, I'm with Marcus here at the end, where I know he talked about being excited to play the rest of Sword of the Sea. Maybe we'll have to follow up and see what his full opinions are now that the game is out and he's probably finished it at this point. But yes, it wasn't my waiting room, but I guess it was like my Sword of the Sea media until I could actually play Sword of the Sea. So this was a good one too. My final recommendation for y'all is Refusing to Die by Charles Harté. One of my, I think, favorite writers for Game Informer so far. Out of the granted 2 issues I've read so far, but I feel like I really resonate with his writing style. What I was not expecting to resonate with was Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, which is what this article is all about. There is a lot that you can take out of this, and as I mentioned earlier, there's like some discourse around the game, which reading through the article, I remember what that could possibly be about. So let's jump into it. And then the other thing I didn't know, this game was supposed to be released in 2020. So that's how you know the development has been evidently troubled. But from what Charles was saying in the article, it seems like it hasn't affected the game in a way that you can tell. I guess like in a negative sense. But then the different clans that you can join as a vampire, and they have different abilities. And Charles picked the Banu Hakim, which has been colloquially referred to as the Batman clan. I was like, oh, okay, so I'd probably join that one too. But what I thought was interesting was he details kind of later on in the article that there are you can get abilities from all of the clans. Like once you pick a clan, you don't have to stick to them in the sense that you miss out on other abilities. You get the chance to get abilities from other clans too, which I thought was interesting. But I thought that was very interesting and definitely gives the player opportunity to kind of like make a build of all kinds of different abilities that synergize really well together, which I always love, being able to have that kind of freedom. Then the other interesting thing was the costuming, and there's like dialogue options that you can pick through. So the costuming was interesting to me because I've said this a couple different times that I'm like, fashion is important, but it's not super important to me, or maybe not as important as maybe it should be. But in this game, it definitely is, because it seems like when you approach people wearing certain things, they'll look at you a certain way. It's similar to how it happens in real life, which I think is pretty cool. And let me see, Charles wrote an example here that I thought was interesting. In one instance, I approached a woman on the street to seduce her into an alley, but it turns out the woman was a sex worker, and Fire's the protagonist, and Fire was wearing provocative enough clothing that the stranger assumed I was a competitor moving in on her turf. And I just think that is so funny to be like, oh, you're trying to lure her in to like suck her blood. She's like, yo, why are you on my turf? Like, get off my corner, kind of thing. Like that was interesting. But on top of the costuming being something that affects the way that people perceive you, there's also dialogue options. So the way that you talk to different characters can produce different outcomes. And something that was interesting about this that Charles noted is that the dialogue isn't like this is the good dialogue option and the bad dialogue option. The narrative director Ian Thomas talks about how they took inspiration from the Mass Effect series and how, which I still need to play, but anyway, the Commander Shepard character and how a lot of his dialogue options, they weren't like the good or the bad option. It's just like kind of taking two different routes depending on like where you want to take the character and having like a more complete approach rather than just like let's be pure good or let's be pure evil kind of thing, which I also appreciate. But yeah, I was not expecting to be as interested in this article as I was at finally finishing it, but there is a little bit with the clans, there is a little bit of a sour note, I guess, and that's the fact that I think there are 4 clans in the game. Let's see. Oh, there's 6 clans in the game, and then 2 more come as DLC later. And I think, and this is something I've never really agreed with, is having the like day 1 DLC. I'm like, if it's day 1, then you knew it was going to be available when you drop the base game, which means it's not really in addition to the base game, it's just something that you want to partition off to charge for more money. And granted, maybe it's not like that all the time, but that's kind of how, that's the perspective that I've built over time. And so I don't really like that. I don't know if that specifically was like the monetization note that people had or if they had something else, but I know for me personally, I'm like, yeah, that if it's gonna come out as DLC day 1, it should just be a part of the game. But that was like the only like sour or icky thing that I read. Everything else I'm like, oh, the scene's actually interesting. So I'll definitely be looking at the gameplay from a different lens now in future showcases. But yeah, that concludes my Game Informer top 5 favorite articles from issue number 370. I'm gonna try a different format with these since shorts on YouTube is weird, and I want this to be more of a like conversational, like video essay and more long form kind of channel. So we'll see how things go with that. But I appreciate y'all's support as always. If you guys have the issue, whether it's digital or physical, let me know what some of your favorite articles were. There's definitely, there was some interesting ones in here. I'm waiting for the October issue because I'm hoping Ghost of Yote is in there because I'm gonna have so much to say about it. Hopefully all good things. I'm really excited for that. But was there any games that you guys were excited for in this issue of Game Informer? Please let me know. And until next time, hope you guys have a nice evening or night. Always enjoy it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.